Hi, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome back to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, as always, it's wonderful to have you along. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Apparently, that helps with the algorithm so more people can find out about the show, even if you make nasty comments, which is going to be part of what I'm going to be talking about today, just to get you ready. And we are sponsored anonymously as a schus for you and your family. Thank you very much. Klal Yisrael needs you. I hope that's true. And if so, I think it's a pretty sad commentary on the world. But there's no question that at this point, until Mashiach comes, I definitely serve a purpose. As somebody once pointed out, we're in the Ikvasa de Mashiach. Somebody pointed out, a number of Gedolim pointed out, when the Ikvasa Mashiach, and Rabbi Shapiro pointed out that the Akev is extremely insensate, the heel. All you can do is tickle it. So anyone who knows how to tickle today is successful. So I guess that's why I'm still around, but I appreciate it. On behalf of all the crazies, thank you. I love you all. I really do. Thanks for inspiring all of us and giving us something to look forward to every week. On this subject of my crazies, and I give you all the love I can. Shout out to you. I missed a week during Hanukkah. I started getting those comments. Are you all right? Is everything okay? I mean, gosh, these real podcasts that actually charge money, they take off for the holiday weekend. You know what I mean? And they stop broadcasting. And gosh, I missed one episode and everyone figures I dropped dead. Now I understand why. Because every morning I get up and I check to make sure I'm still alive. You know what I mean? So when I am, that's a good thing. But yeah, so the fact that there are people out there. But the reason that I missed it was not because I was taking a vacation. I came back to Eretz Yisrael just on Hanukkah because my daughter had an operation in America, and me and my wife flew in. And it was brutal. I mean, it was 14 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like, I don't know what it is in centigrade, but it ain't good, you know? And it was freezing cold. And Shabbos, it snowed, and it was just, so cold, so terrible. And, and so basically, we were helping out, and that was the theme of the trip. But every now and then I would go someplace and I would meet people, and they would all share how much they enjoyed the show. And it was so heartening, because basically I'm sitting here by myself and I'm talking. And I've pointed this out more than once. I'm always just sitting here talking. The bookcase is always here. The chair is always here. It's just one hour a week we film it. But that's basically all I have, I've lost all of my jobs through my wit and personality. So this is all I really have going at this point. And the fact that there are so many people who get a chizuk from it, that means a lot to me. And on that subject, I was at the 8:30 Shachris in the White Shul, because my daughter lives in Far Rockaway, and I give a daf yomi in the morning, about 7:15 till about 8:10, and then I run over to make. I can't daven earlier than that. It's 4 Nates, and I get to the 8:30. That's where I usually daven. It's my usual haunt when I'm in America, and a fellow came up to me. He says, Rabbi Orlofsky, I'm visiting from Los Angeles. His name was Rabbi Horowitz. He is the rabbi in Tarzana, California. Now, I used to live in North Hollywood in 1978, 79, back then. And North Hollywood was about the only Orthodox community in the Valley. It's called the San Fernando Valley. And there were a lot of Jews in West Valley, in places like Encino and Tarzana. And now, Baruch Hashem, there are shuls there, and the whole place has begun to grow. It's so exciting. So the rabbi in Tarzana. For those of you who are wondering what that name Tarzana is, that's because the fellow Burroughs, who wrote all the Tarzan stories, made a lot of money and had an enormous ranch. And when he died, it was actually turned into a community, and he had named the ranch Tarzana after Tarzan. And he's the Rav there. So he tells me my 8-year-old son is a big fan. So, of course, when I hear an 8-year-old is a big fan, I assume that he's talking about Torah Live, where I am a character, Rabbi Siddur. And if any of your kids have ever seen the Rabbi Siddur animated classes, and you'll recognize my voice. They say they also drew him to look like me. I don't think I'm that white, but, in any event, I think my nose is a little smaller. I'm not sure. But anyhow, so he says, no, the podcast. He listens to it before everybody else. And he says, he says to us, oh, you have to listen to this part. This line is great, Now, the truth is, I do have a number of people in that age group who watch my podcast. I would even go so far as to say that's probably my target audience. And so he said, maybe, so he just wanted to share that with me. So I said, so give me his name. I'll give him a shout out. And Yosef Shalom Horowitz in Tarzana, California. Thank you for listening. And may you go and continue to listen well into your old age, assuming that Kodesh Baruch Hu keeps me around. If our sponsor is right and Klal Yisrael needs me, then Kodesh Baruch Hu will keep me around. Baba Dovid, somebody went to ask him to speak on a video on behalf of Yeshiva Torah Or, and he says, "No, I don't make videos." He's up in Nahariya, and so he says, "But Rabbi Scheinberg asked." Goes, "Oh, Rabbi Scheinberg asked, then I have to do it. You can't say no to Rabbi Scheinberg." And he says, "Did you ever wonder why there are so many Gedolim who are living to 100 these days?" He says, "Because there's no one to take their place. Kodesh Baruch Hu is keeping them around." So if you're right, and Kodesh Baruch Hu needs me, then I'll be here when Yosef Shalom is already in his old age, and I'll still be here cranking out. And I'll probably look exactly the same because I was very clever. I aged early. So my wife is ridiculously young looking. And when she gets together with my daughters, very often they think she's one of the daughters, one of the sisters, and I'm glad if one of us had to age, it was me. But I always say she must have signed a deal with the devil or something, or The Picture of Dorian Gray, if you ever read that book, But I aged early, and I definitely looked my age. When my youngest son was born, and I came to the hospital, they said, Hasaba Igia, so the grandfather's here. So Mirza Hashem will all be around to enjoy it. Okay, so it was nice seeing everybody, and I'm sorry that we had a little bit of a break, and just reminds me of the country western song, "How can I miss you if you won't go away?" So every now and then we like to have a little break. I pulled out my Rabbi Orlofsky mug for the occasion. Anyway, okay. So I want to deal with a topic, and it's a general topic, and it goes to a specific issue. But I had Rav Tuvia Singer on the show, as a lot of people know. And it got a lot of attention. Not from my usual audience. I'm sure my usual audience watched it, but there were a lot of people who are not. For example, I know that there are some non-Jews who watch the show, But I think I had a larger group of non-Jews watching that particular podcast than my other ones. My Hanukkah podcast did not get as many views on many of the sites that this one did. Yeah, it's at this point my second most viewed show on YouTube. I don't know Turning Time because I don't get the numbers. I don't know Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the others. But on this one, it got 15,000 views, I think, 16,000. A lot of people watch it. And so it attracted a certain audience who does not normally watch the Rabbi Orlofsky show. So most of what I'm going to say doesn't really speak to my regular audience because I'm sure the people who watch the podcast with Rabbi Singer don't watch me usually. And I noticed there were a lot of negative comments. Now, there were a lot of positive comments, but I see no reason to read those because, gosh, if you're watching the show by this point, you more or less know what you're in for and who I am. But there were a number of very unpleasant comments, which I would like to share with you. And like I said, I don't know all of these emails, how to read them exactly. This one looks like Meira M. Pernicone MD. Yeah. Rabbi Orlofsky needs to work on not in capitals, interrupting Rabbi Tuvia's response capitals to his own questions. His nervous giggling is quite a distraction. Now, of course, the people watching my show know that my giggling is not nervous. I giggle because I actually find things interesting and amusing. And I found a lot of the things we were discussing. All right, I'll talk about that when I get there, but I just want to read all the nasty comments. Milton Berg 5534. Please, Rabbi Orlofsky, let the interviewer speak. You may be interrupting the train of thought too often. Okay, that wasn't so nasty. PDM 1967. Why is Rabbi Orlofsky laughing so much? Doesn't seem like a funny topic. Very distracting. John Doe-MG7HT. This guy doesn't even have the decency to sign his name because it's such a nasty comment, but okay. Rabbi Orlofsky, it would be helpful if you let Rabbi Singer speak, as he is 1,000,000 times more knowledgeable than worldly than you. Your constant silly laughing interruptions are disruptive and childish and truly distract from the knowledge Rabbi Singer is sharing. Rabbi Orlofsky's insularity and ignorance is truly shocking. Better to keep quiet and be thought a fool than to open one's mouth and confirm it. Well, John Doe, I think you would have had the decency to actually sign your name if you're going to do this kind of character assassination. But all right, you're obviously a miserable person. Forgive my nervous laugh. What a miserable thing to write. And hiding behind an anonymity? You lowlife. But that's okay. Michael Grunsfeld, 8221. Rabbi Orlofsky, you interrupt and talk and laugh too much. I want to hear Rabbi Singer, not you. Okay. Arel Rachel Mishori, 3833, if I read that correctly. Rabbi Orlofsky, now we switch to capitals. Please don't interrupt so much. Okay. Temi Perlberg 6007. Please stop interrupting. Rock in Band T56. This is the first time I've seen this rabbi. I only watched because Tuvia was being interviewed. Will be the last time. He talks over Tuvia, cuts in, and cackles like Kamala. I guess that means Kamala Harris. For nothing. He definitely needs to do lessons on how to interview. And the last one over there, Norman Babar 1026. Why do you laugh uselessly? 2 question marks. Irritating. Okay. Now, I assume none of these people are regular watchers of my show because they know that I always laugh And if you've watched my other interviews, you know I always interrupt. And I do laugh quite a bit, actually. Now, there were some positive comments and there were some defenses, etc. But I want to talk about my interviewing in general, because even though I never get this amount of negative comments on my interview style, I always get one. Almost every interview I've done, there's always one person who complains, I interrupt, let the person talk, we don't want to hear you, things like this, right? I don't think they're usually my people. And that's why when I did the podcast with Avi Yudkowsky talking about what he was doing on Shmini Atzeres, so Dina MD, doctors don't like me so much. Okay, I'm done listening to this podcast. It's very unpleasant and disturbing to follow the story when Rav Yudkowsky, I assume that's how I know she doesn't listen on a regular basis because she just combined the two names, is capitals, constantly interrupting. Now, that was the only comment I got on that. But when I interviewed Lenny Solomon a long time ago, I got that comment. I get the comment from time to time. I interrupt too much. So I want to talk about my interview style. And more than that, why do I do interviews? This is not an interview show. It's not a talk show. It's not a talk show. It is, as you probably guessed from the title, the Rabbi Orlofsky Show, which means if you're not interested in hearing Rabbi Orlofsky, you should not be watching this show. Yeah. Now, I'm never doing breaking interviews. I have not received exclusive interviews with people. Trump will probably never be on my podcast, Nonetheless, when Trump was on the Joe Rogan show, which was seen by an enormous amount of people, Joe Rogan said I had to keep interrupting him because he wasn't answering my questions. In other words, I didn't want to hear him give his usual speech. I don't want to hear him give his stump speech. I want to get into things about him as a person and have a conversation and not just have him have his regular speech. So one of these comments I actually answered. Not that it helped, of course, because people like this, there is no answering them. These are trolls. These are the lowest of the low, people who make anonymous comments on YouTube videos or things like that are just the most miserable people. I don't care because it helps the algorithm and more people find out about the show. That's fine. Insult me as much as you want. But I'm just saying that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do with your time, is write anonymous, nasty comments to people. But okay, you're just a sick person and you need help. But so one of them I wrote back and I said, then don't listen to my show. It's my show. As Rabbi Singer said, he has thousands of videos up on YouTube where these people obviously watch this. Go and listen to him, uninterrupted, speaking for thousands of hours. Why in the world would you choose to watch me? This is the only place to hear Tuvia Singer? I was the breakout opportunity. You'd never have a chance to listen to him otherwise. So I wrote one comment. I said, then don't listen to my show. And they wrote back a really vicious response. I didn't even write it down because it was just so vicious. But the point is, if you want to hear this person, there is nobody I'm interviewing who has not been interviewed numerous times. Yeah? Avi Yudkowsky speaks around. He has been recorded many times. You can go to the internet and find him being interviewed where he's speaking straight and nobody is interrupting him. I interviewed Nissim Black. Guess what? There were dozens of interviews with Nissim Black. Just look it up. You can listen to him with people who are not going to make any comments or interrupt him. Lenny Solomon, 100%. Ari Goldwag, he has his own podcast. You can listen to all of these people. There's nobody I've had on the show who I'm breaking news with where they say, why can't you be quiet? So the question comes up then, if this is the Rabbi Orlofsky show and it's not an interview show, why do I ever interview anybody? What's the point of that? So I think when I get to the basic philosophy of why I have interviews, you'll maybe understand my interview style. Now, I will give a caveat. My parents wanted me to go to college, like all Jewish parents. And in fact, my in-laws, one of the many reasons they didn't want me to marry their daughter was because I didn't have a college degree. And everybody knows that you cannot be educated without a college degree. This was stated clearly in The Wizard of Oz, where the wizard says to the Scarecrow, there are people with no more brains than you, but they have something you don't have, a college degree. And he hands him a college degree and he goes, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I'm a genius. And my father, even though he insisted that I go to college, said, if you're an idiot, you'll be an idiot with a college degree. And there's no question about it, So to me, it was not an absolute value. Education is a value. And that's why my mother-in-law couldn't figure out, if I didn't go to college, how I knew more about history, science, literature, politics, than these people who went to college, which forced her to add a caveat, which is you cannot be educated unless you go to college, unless you're Dovid Orlofsky. So I was the exception. Yeah. So because I'm well-read, the bathroom is my university, and I go through books. It takes me a very long time. I started War and Peace, and you can go through hundreds of pages of War and Peace and not even make a dent in it. I thought Dickens wrote long, but this is taking a very long time. But anyway, so that's my continuing adult education university. Is, read a few pages at a time. But so I agreed. I went to Queens College, night college, when I was learning Chofetz Chaim. I took 2 courses. I took Introduction to Psychology and Introduction to Sociology, thinking I was going to maybe go into psychology or something like that. I did not see myself going into law. I did not see myself becoming a doctor. I did not see myself becoming a nuclear physicist. I saw myself more as a people person, so I thought I was going to go into psychology. And I remember this was in the early 1970s. It was still in the time of the counterculture revolution. And it was one night, Friday night, my father said, so did you sign up for college? And I said, yeah. He said, what'd you take? I said, Psychology 101 and Sociology 101. He goes, Psych and Soc? Every hippie moron takes Psych and Soc. Why didn't you take a math class? So I concluded from that there was almost nothing that I was going to do that was going to make my parents happy. So I didn't bother continuing my college career. But when I moved to Los Angeles to teach, with my parents referred to as running away from home, so at some point they made another push. So I went to Valley College, night college, and I decided, well, they're not going to like what I do anyway, so I might as well take things I find interesting. And I took journalism and broadcasting. Those were the 2 topics that I took. After that, I said, anyone who can do this for 4 years deserves the greatest respect. I don't see how anyone can go through this. And that was the end of my college career. But one of my 4 courses was broadcasting. And the fellow who taught it was a producer. He wasn't Spielberg. Anybody who's teaching night college at Valley College is probably not Cecil B. DeMille. You know what I mean? He's not Otto Preminger. He's not one of the great producers. But he had produced something. I don't know what, Anyway, so the guy who taught journalism was a former editor of the LA Times. So I picked up a lot of useful information in that course. But anyway, so he told the following story, which made a deep impression on me. Probably the greatest television newsman was considered Edward R. Murrow. Maybe after him was Walter Cronkite. I don't know. But Edward R. Murrow was in a class all of his own. And he was interviewing Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, of course, who was considered the father of the atomic bomb. And he was interviewing him, and he asked him at one point, now that we have nuclear arms, do you think that the world will ever destroy itself? And Oppenheimer stopped and thought about that question for a full minute. And then he said, no, I don't think they will. And he said, the genius of Edward R. Murrow was that he did not interrupt him, because that 1 minute of silence where he was considering mankind destroying itself was more powerful than anything he could have said. So, do I appreciate the idea of giving people a chance to answer? Yes, 100%. Having said that, which as Seinfeld points out is always where you're going to completely negate what you just said. Having said that, a good interviewer knows how to ask questions to draw the person out. There were a number of interviews with Kamala Harris, who apparently I cackle like her, like she does, when she was running for president. And I remember watching Bill O'Reilly comment on it. And he said, if I was interviewing her, and I've interviewed many presidents, I wouldn't have let her get away with those answers. I would have said, I'm sorry, Madam Vice President, you didn't answer the question. And they would ask her a question, how are you going to beat inflation? And she would say, I grew up in a middle-class home. And da-da-da. I said, right, but that wasn't the question. The question is, how are you going to beat inflation? So if you're a good interviewer, you don't just ask the question, let the person pivot and get away with it. You have to say, I'm sorry, but you didn't answer my question. That's one point. The other point is, especially people who give a lot of interviews. Yeah. So it's not enough to just let them give the same answers. You have to get inside of it. Now, I'm going to bring a couple of examples. Let me get to my philosophy first. So why do I interview people? I interview people because I want to get out of them a chiddush, something about them that everyone has not heard before. Now, when it comes to Tuvia Singer, for example, in my last interview, I had two agendas. One is there are a lot of people in the frum world who never heard of Tuvia Singer before. I'm not going for the Tuvia Singer crazies who would listen to his thousands of videos and don't know why I'm interrupting him. Forget why I'm interrupting him, but my agenda was to introduce him to an audience who never heard of Rabbi Singer. That's number one. Number two is my main agenda was not to have Rabbi Singer discuss his answers to basic theology, explaining the difference between Christianity and Judaism. Like I said, he has thousands of videos. I wanted to get into Tuvia Singer, the person. Who is he? And that was the question I kept coming back to because I wasn't getting an answer to it. And that is, how does a guy who grows up in Borough Park and goes to the mirror become Tuvia Singer? That, to me, is the most interesting question. More than Luke, Mark, and all the apostles put together. And the Isaiah 52. I wanted to hear who he is as a person, and I wanted to draw that out. And I think I was more successful at that than anyone else has been, because he doesn't like to talk about himself, quite obviously, And in fact, one of the comments, because like I say, most of the comments, there were 287 comments, most of the comments were overwhelmingly positive. One of them said, "I'm really interested in hearing more about his life." Yes, me too. That's what I set out to do. That's what I was trying to accomplish. So you can argue whether I did it the best way or not, but that's what I was trying to do. If you go back and listen to my interview with Nissim Black, you'll hear he says a number of times, "I never told this story before. I never brought this out. This is a point that I never mentioned." He says that a number of times. Why? Because I wasn't doing just an interview. Okay, Nissim, tell us about your background. Where did you come from? And that, and he'll give his regular stump speech. I feel that he is an incredibly interesting human being. And I think he has a message that is unbelievable for Klal Yisrael to hear. I think he's incredibly inspiring. And I'm speaking to him as a Rav and a Mechanech, not a interview in a regular forum, right? There are forums for this, right? There's some kind of a thing called Meaningful People, right? They've never called me. I'm waiting to get called by the meaningless people in the interview. That's who I imagine is going to call me. "Hi, we're doing Meaningless People. Are you available?" But I was trying to bring out things. So in my interview with Avi Yudkowsky, who happens to be the brother of my producer, he told me that after the interview, he sent it around to the family, and everyone agreed that they had never heard him tell the story as well and with as much detail. You know why? Because I didn't just sit there and let him talk. I drew out details. I was asking him, "How did you feel about this? How did this affect you?" I was trying to get into the story and the person. Yes, I was interrupting. Yes, I was making comments. Because at the end of the day, this is the Rabbi Orlofsky show, and I have a message that I want to get out to Klal Yisrael from these people. If you want to hear them give their speeches, just Google them. And should Trump come on my show, trust me, I have questions for him that nobody has asked him before. And I think he'll have a great time. So, Mr. President-elect, if you're out there and you're listening, you have an open invitation. We film on Mondays or Tuesdays. We might even change the time. We changed the time for Riptuvia. So we might even change the time for you, assuming that it works out. But, we'll be happy to have you on the show. And Ben Shapiro, next time you come to Israel, if you want to reach another audience, perhaps, that you're not reaching now, which is the Rabbi Orlofsky crazies. This is a great opportunity for you to, really make a name for yourself, finally, and break out from that little bubble you're in. Kamala Harris, I'll have you on too. I got questions. Trust me, I got questions for you. These people, but you don't need me. They're interviewed a gazillion times. If I'm going to interview them, it's going to be Rabbi Orlofsky's take on these people. That's why I have an interview show. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to do an interview. It's just me talking. That's what it is. Ruba de Ruba of the Rabbi Orlofsky show is Rabbi Orlofsky sitting here in a chair in front of his bookcase, just talking with no preparation. I actually had to copy over all of these comments. That was about the most preparation I've done for a podcast in years, so I could read all of these comments. Usually I don't do that much prep, but I usually just sit there and say, "So what should I talk about?" And I remember there was one time we had some, people are always invited to come and join the filming and be part of the studio audience. And we, I remember one time I came in, it was when Michael was producer, and I had no idea what I was to talk about. I was just out of idea. Listen, I've been doing this for over 6 years. I don't always have ideas. How many things have I got to talk about? I'm not doing a news podcast. I'm not learning a sefer. It's just Rabbi Orlofsky doing free association, So I said to Michal, what should I talk about? He goes, I don't know. So I had to ask my wife before I left the house, what should I talk about? He goes, I don't know. So I turned to the guy who was the audience. I said, what should I talk about? He says, well, why don't you talk about this? I said, okay. And that was my podcast. So I really don't do a lot of prep, So when I'm interviewing somebody, I'm doing it because So I got one comment when I did my show with Lenny Solomon, which, by the way, is excellent. You should definitely go back and watch it. And they said, well, it was also one person made a comment, you're interrupting too much. I said, but that's because I'm not asking for the Lenny Solomon story. He's been interviewed many times. You can find many interviews with him. I'm talking to him as a chaver. We go back 50 years, maybe 45 years. Yeah. And we were sharing and discussing, and I want to bring out aspects of his story that not everybody knows. And that's what I want to hear. Like when Nissim Black says, I never told this before, or I've never given this detail before. That's what I want. I want to be able to present these people to my audience, and by extension, Klal Yisrael, in a different way. So if you want to hear Tuvia Singer, watch his videos. If you want to hear Ari Goldwag, watch his podcast. Listen to his podcast. Watch his interviews. He's interviewed on all kinds of shows. So too Lenny Solomon. I guess Rabbi Gronowski and Rabbi Geisler don't get interviewed that much. You could argue that this might have been their only forum, And there are certain people, and there are a lot of people who ask to come onto the show and to be interviewed. I don't interview everybody, I want to get something where I believe my audience is going to get chizuk and a perspective in a unique way that they're not going to get normally. And they're not going to get it by listening to their regular interview. So if I can bring in somebody that nobody's heard of before to give a new perspective, gewaldig, right? What's the exception I make? Family members. I'll have on any of my family members who want to come on. My son Yaakov, I've been waiting to have him back on to discuss Israeli politics, but every time he says, it's only if you can edit it and put it out the same day, because events in Israel happen so fast these days that it's stale news by the end of it. If it comes out a week later, it's too stale. So we keep waiting to find an opportunity to bring him in and do it real fast and get it out the same day, But Moshe Yehuda, came in, and the 2 Waterbury episodes were the 2 most watched episodes, at least on YouTube, until this one with Tuvia Singer. He just knocked the second one down to the 3rd most watched. He's now the 2nd most watched. So all you Waterbury fans better go and watch it again just to push up the numbers. Oh, you fangirls, I assume. But when I interview somebody, it's because I think they have a message for Klal Yisrael that I want to get out. When I interviewed Dovid Olesker, I think that he had a unique position having worked on campuses. And because of everything that was happening on campuses, I wanted to hear what his take on current events, because no one else is asking him. He's not being tapped. I thought that would be a chiddush for people. My friend Rabbi Ravinsky, who is a male who does milas for goyim, I thought that was such he's a fascinating person in general. I thought that was such a fascinating story, and I wanted to bring that out to Klal Yisrael. So most of my shows are not interview shows, and if you want interview shows where my presence is minimized, there won't be too many. I'll tell you what one of my favorite episodes was, and it doesn't have a very large viewership, and I think it was unbelievable. And that was when I had the founder of the Shuvu schools. I only did an hour. I wanted to do 2 hours. I only did an hour because he was running to another event, But that to me was one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever heard. Hearing him talk about it, there was so many aspects to it. There were so many details. And did I react to it? Yes, I reacted to it because there were things that I found shocking, and fascinating. And I'm not going to sit there and go, So then what did you, said, yeah, I'm a real person and I'm reacting in real time. And I like to think that I am your representative sitting in the room. If you were sitting with these people, what would you say? How would you react? And obviously, people find me annoying and that I laugh too much and that I giggle and that I interrupt. Do not watch this show. There are plenty of interviews with all of these people, and you don't have to watch me. But if you're going to watch me, it's going to be Rabbi Orlofsky's take on it to be able to get into people. And like I say, there are a lot of people who want to be interviewed. I could do every show as an interview show, and I don't because I am blessed by the fact that I am surrounded by so many incredibly talented people that I get to know. But I think the reason people watch this is because people find me interesting too. And that's the reason that I have a podcast. I know a lot of people who tried starting podcasts, well-known people, and it never took off. Never took off. I used to give a shiur, I still do actually, every other Motzi Shabbos in Har Nof. And once upon a time, I used to get hundreds of people. I don't anymore, but I used to get hundreds of people. And sometimes when I was traveling, I would have other famous speakers fill in for me. They didn't get my crowd because my crowd wanted to hear me. It was a unique perspective, which of course begs the question that I always ask. And I'll give you an example. Project Inspire, who has used me many times, and I believe in their cause, and it was based on the principle that Reb Noach Weinberg had of wake the sleeping giant, of trying to get the frum community to, as a whole, do kiruv and change people's lives. But I find it's also extremely effective as giving chizuk to frum people. It's probably the most effective event, the Project Inspire convention. So they did a Shabbos in Flatbush, and they had a lot of big name speakers. I'm not saying this to brag, because these are my people, right? I don't think any of the people who watch my interview with Tuvia Singer and hate me will be watching this, right? So most of my people. So this shouldn't come as surprising to you that what a balgaiva I am, But I had the largest crowds and all major names, and I got the strongest reaction. And I said to the person who organized the event, I said, I feel like I'm effective. He goes, you are. And I said, so how come people don't bring me in to speak? And he said, I don't know. I don't know why. He says, a good question. But, and I'll tell you another funny thing. The more effective I am, the less likely I am ever to be invited back. I'll give you an example. I spoke in Edmonton, Canada. They told me this was the largest turnout that they ever had. And everyone said it was unbelievably effective. They brought me back the second year. And it was a larger turnout. And they said to me it was even more effective. And that was 12 years ago. And I never heard from them again. I spoke in Chicago at the Shalom Bayis event. The person organizing it said they had to change the venue 3 times because it wasn't large enough. They had one venue, and then it was so many people, they moved to another venue. They had to move it a 3rd time. They told me it was the biggest turnout they got. They raised the most money. It was unbelievably effective. And I said, then you're never going to invite me back. And they never did. In fact, I have never been back in Chicago since, So I don't know why. When I'm the more effective I am, the less likely I am ever to be invited back, there are very few places that still invite me. Project Inspire is one of the few, where so they say, look, we can't do it every year. It's like every other year they bring me in. But, I mentioned this because I'm planning a trip in either February or March. So we'll, anybody who, this is basically an infomercial at this point. This is not even a podcast. You can contact me at my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. And if anyone says, hey, that is a great question, why don't we have Rabbi Orlofsky for a Shabbos? Won't it uplift? In fact, one time I put together quotes from all the places that I spoke, and they're like, why? Everyone knows who you are. Everyone knows how effective you are. I said, I know, but for some reason, nobody brings me out to speak, And I'm just mentioning that. But I believe that I have something to... That's why I do this podcast. It gives me an opportunity to give chizuk to people. And I'm just always amazed of the emails that I get. And maybe since I've read so many negative ones, maybe in a future podcast, I'll read some of the positive ones because they're just so inspiring. What can I tell you? I love Klal Yisrael. And like I say, when I go to some yeshiva sheminyan, I figure nobody knows who I am. And a bunch of guys come up to me afterwards and they all listen to the podcast, and, or I'm someplace and a bunch of Hasidim come over and they all listen to the podcast, or children, elementary school children, like Yosef Shalom Horowitz in Tarzana, California, or other kids that I meet all the time. It's just, or teenagers, or people who are off the derech, or elderly people, or people who are sick and they say they get chizuk from it, It's an unbelievable thing. And so, when I interview somebody, you're going to hear me, and I'm going to interrupt, and I'm going to ask questions. And I'm probably going to laugh because I am having such a wonderful time being with these people. I am not a dispassionate observer. I am a participant. I am part of the program. So if you like my style, I hope you'll watch some more. And if you don't, I don't have to say anything because you're not watching me now. And that's it. I want to explain that I believe there's a method to my madness and what it is. And so when you see one of my interview shows, yes, you're going to see me involved. And you're going to see me commenting, and I'm going to be drawing the person out and the points that they want to make so that I help them to elucidate it better, because very often people say things and they think that their audience is with them and they're not. That's why in every book or film, there's always one dumb character who's there to provide the commentary. So in Jules Verne, Journey to the Center of the Earth, there's this one guy who's like the servant, and he's there to ask all the questions that other people, want to ask and don't know. So you need somebody that asks questions. That's who I am in these interviews. So I can help the person make their message more understandable to people who normally listen to me, and like to have things spelled out. As my friend Rabbi Orlofsky used to tell me, he said they in shul Friday night and they say, Rabbi, it's pretty cold in here. Maybe the custodian, the non-Jewish custodian, could turn on the heat. So he says, Mark, turn on the heat. So he says, Rabbi, I thought you can only do it derech remiza, with a hint. He says, by him, that's a hint. So he always used to say, you have to spell things out, make sure that it's clear. And I used to say, my wife, on those occasions when she would give shiurim, she would prepare for a month and she would show me her outline. And I would say, this is a 6-month semester that you just prepared, okay? Your audience is not up to you. They haven't been preparing it. They're not in the sugya. Give them a chance to catch up. And that's the difference. When Rabbi Shapiro used to give his Thursday shir to the Hamon Am, he spent a lot of time developing every point and explaining it. When he gave his other shiurim, he spoke more often b'chatzi dibur because he took it for granted that you understood what he was talking about. So, okay. I think I've beaten this dead horse. And this brings us to the question and answer portion of the program. We have a sponsor for our Q&A this week. Q&A sponsor, are inappropriate internet sites destroying your life? They wrecked mine for years. Yikes. That all changed when I joined Guard Your Eyes, which I can tell you is a very powerful website. I'm now free for a year. If you struggle, come join us. We'll help you break free. Yiddenhelpingyidden at gmail.com. That is the address, yiddenhelpingyidden. It's up on your screen. And it's mamash a machla. Mamash a machla, destroying Klal Yisrael. So everybody is encouraged to check it out. Okay, our first question by Yehuda Zimberg. Is it racist to say the Jews are the chosen people? I once heard you explain this question during an Orla Golas seminar, and I found it quite humorous and entertaining. Well, it's still humorous and entertaining. I think I did this on a podcast, but okay. Unless you're a real crazy who have not only listened to all of the podcasts, but have committed them to memory, you probably won't remember, you know. There is a rule that does not apply to the Rabbi Orlofsky show, unfortunately. I heard this from Rabbi Leff many years ago, and that is you can repeat a joke once every 2 years. You can repeat a story once a year, and you can repeat a Dvar Torah even in the same speech. I don't have that. People, mamish, commit to memory everything I've ever said. And, you know, I'm often challenged to come up for new material for people. You know, now there are certain people who just enjoy it. Like, gosh, Frank Sinatra sang the same 7 songs for the last 20 years of his career, you know what I mean? But they enjoyed it because that's what they wanted to hear, you know. I had a lady in Melbourne, Australia, when I was doing my YB Jewish, and she came to me at the end. She says, this is the 11th or 12th time, I forgot, you know, time that I've heard this. I said, I'm sorry, I would have done something else. She says, no, I come dafka to hear it again, you know, and especially live. It's a whole different dynamic when you hear it live. So that's why they say in Musa, nochada here. So even if you heard this before, and hear it again. Yeah. The concept of the chosen people. There are people who find this very offensive, chosen people. I was on a panel in Cape Town, South Africa, and these kids were picking on. It was me. It was a Catholic teacher, a Muslim teacher, and a secular Jewish teacher, and me. And they were asking different questions. And there were these 3 girls who were like really hassling the Catholic teacher. And I was giving them the stink eye, like, apparently not too subtly. Luckily, it wasn't being videoed. But afterwards, the next question was to me. And they said, Rabbi Orlofsky, you seem upset that we were, you know, challenging Christianity. But didn't you say the Jews are the chosen people? And I said, sure. And the Christians think they're the chosen people, don't you? And she said, yes. I said, nobody would be doing this if they didn't think they were right. Of course they think they're right. Everyone thinks they're right. You wouldn't be following a philosophy that you thought was wrong. Noah Weinberg once said, in America, you're free to be a Jew, a Christian, and a Muslim as long as you don't take it seriously. Once you take it seriously, then you're a religious fanatic, you know? So you can't really believe it. So we believe it. But yeah, of course we believe we're the chosen people. But what does that mean? Yeah. So the story of the Jewish people start with Avram Avinu and Lech Lecha, and God comes to Avraham and says, I'm going to make you the chosen people, setting you on a journey. And you're going to get children, wealth, fame, all good things. So Avram starts out on his journey. As soon as he gets to Israel, it's a famine. Can't stay. Has to leave. Goes down to Egypt. They kidnap his wife. Paro gets hit with plagues, which is what Paros do best. He gets his wife back. Comes back to Israel. Has a fight with his one remaining relative, Lot. They separate, and Lot goes to Stone. And then he gets captured in a war by the 4 world armies. So now Avraham has to go to war against the 4 world armies. Luckily, he has his trusty manservant Eliezer. Yeah, so it's an even fight. He defeats them and saves Lot. Then he comes back, and after 10 years, he still has no children. And that was one of the promises. So if you've been in Eretz Yisrael for 10 years and no children, you have to, take another wife. He marries Hagar. And those of you who have 2 wives, you know that this very often happens, that the 2 wives don't always get together. Right? They start having fights. They start arguing. And he has to send his wife away. And eventually she comes back. And this goes on. This goes on for 10 years. At the end, the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, so, how do you like my bris? How do you like my confidence so far? Wait, I have one last surprise for you. Bris Milah. I was saving that for last. Yeah. So this doesn't sound like what I would think of the chosen people. So Hashem says, what do you think it means to be the chosen people? To sit around and get reward? I'm the God of all people. We want all people to get reward. We want all people to relate to God. We want the entire world. We want God to be God of the entire world. I'm not choosing you over everybody else. Yes, in Christianity, if you don't become a Christian, then you'll be cast into the pit of hell and burned for eternity. All right? And by the way, you better get it right, because if you're a Catholic, the Protestants are going to burn in hell too. And if you're a Protestant, the Catholics will burn in hell. And if you're a Protestant, you better make sure you get the right sect. And if you're a Catholic, you better make sure you find the right pope, because in the 1300s, they had an Italian pope and a French pope, and each one put the other's followers into excommunication, which means you don't get to go to heaven. So, whereas we say, that's why Catholics, Christians, Muslims will do anything they can to get you to convert, including torture, because it's very important that they save your soul. When you come to a rabbi and you say you want to convert, you say, why? What do you want to do that for? And we tell them, it's so hard. Don't do that. Because I want to go to heaven. He says, no problem. Do the 7, go to heaven. Follow the 7 Noahide laws and you go to heaven. You don't have to be a Jew to be that. He says, what kind of religion are you? You're saying you don't have to be part of your religion to go to heaven? He goes, that's right. God loves all people. You don't have to be a Jew to go to heaven. So what does it mean we're the chosen people? It means we're chosen to inspire the world. Am Mamleches Kohanim, just like the Kohanim are there to serve the Jewish people are there to serve the world. Yeah, we're there to be an inspiration, or lagoyim, a light to the nations. And if we don't inspire them by our wonderful behavior, then we will inspire them by our terrible sufferings. And people will say, wow, look what God does to the Jews because they don't listen to him. Obviously, it's real important to listen to God. Hence the old Jewish joke where Goldberg says to God, God, is it true that we are the chosen people? And he says, yes, Goldberg, you are. He says, do me a favor, choose somebody else once in a while. So The Jewish people have never looked at their status as unbelievable. Even though these other religions believe that they're so right that the Jews are going to burn in hell, we don't hate them. You ever see a Jew who hates a Christian because he thinks they're the chosen people? No. You know why? Because we know they're wrong. You know why Christians hate Jews when they think they're the chosen people? Because they know we're right. So that's what the role of chosen people means. Okay, well, that's it for this time together. If you want to find out more about the show, feel free to go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can write an email. You can leave a comment on the episode. You can sign up for one of our online shiurim, our Mesilas Yesharim. We still have people who are joining. It's a ladies' Mesilas Yesharim on Mondays. We have our Daf Yomi every day. We still have gentlemen joining. Our Tefillah share on Sundays. We still have people joining that one. And as I mentioned, somebody asked me about this. You mentioned some time ago about the Pirkei Avos share online. Is that going to happen? Well, since I have not received a tremendous amount of reaction right now, that's not happening. If I get a nice amount of people who say that they're interested, then it would be fun to start. And that's it for now. You can, I almost forgot, you can sponsor an episode. We need sponsors. You can sponsor a Q&A. You can sponsor a Parsha in 5. And all of that is coming up. So that's it for this episode. Until next time, I am David Orlofsky, and this has been The Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.